My name is Glory Pens for 8panel and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make the 8 pieces or 6 pieces skirt, like we fondly call it in Nigeria, but in essence is actually a 8-panel or a 6-panel gore skirt. Now in Nigeria we love our gore skirt in a mermaid silhouette shape because this shape accentuates the hip line of an African woman, and you know we like to look curvy and fabulous. Okay, so this skirt is not a big deal at all, even though in Nigeria most tailors make it look like a big deal. That's because we know that this is where the market is, and you know we like our money coming in. All right now, and yes, as a result of this, most beginners feel making this skirt is really difficult, but in essence it's very easy. All you need to do is a little math skill, right? I know we all did mathematics in primary school, how to divide, multiply, subtract and add. That's all we need to make this skirt. It's very easy. In no time I'll be done cutting and I'll wear and flaunt my skirt, and you'll see that indeed this is easy. So yes, I'm going to be teaching you the freehand method of cutting and making this skirt. I'll first illustrate on the board what exactly I'll be doing on my fabric so that it is clear what I'm doing, because watching other YouTube videos I realized that when YouTubers are making tutorials and are cutting freehand directly on fabric, sometimes it's not very clear. Like you might not have a proper understanding of what's going on. So I'm going to illustrate on the board exactly what I'll be doing on my fabric, and I hope you would understand. Now leave in the comment section if you're one of those who prefer a 6 pieces or a 8 pieces skirt. You know, I like 8 pieces because the more the panels, the more the fullness at the hem, the more the sway and the flow, you know, that feminine grace, you know. So let me know in the comment section, do you like the 6 pieces or do you like 8 pieces skirt? For today, I'm going to be sewing an 8 pieces skirt, but on the board, I'm also going to explain to you how to cut a 6 pieces skirt. Let's go! I forgot to add, guys, if you're new here, welcome. Please subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up. This is for the YouTube algorithm so that more people can see my content. Please. And if you're already subscribed to this channel, welcome. How is it going? Have you been up to any new projects? Do you have any challenges? Do you have questions for me from my previous tutorial? I would like to hear in the comment section. All right, now that that's done, let's start. Okay, so these are the following measurements I took for my skirts. Don't be scared, guys. I just had to break down all these numbers, but it's really no big deal, so don't let this scare you. My phone is my calculator and it's my camera at the same time, so I had to do the calculations using my phone first, put them down on the board before I continued filming with my phone. Okay, so the first measurement here is the waist circumference, right? The next measurement is the hip circumference. The next measurement is the breakpoint circumference. Now, let me explain. This breakpoint circumference is the part of the skirt that tapers in before it breaks out into a flay. And then the next second measurement is the skirt length. My skirt length is 45 inches, which is the floor length, because this skirt looks more beautiful when it flows, when it touches the ground. And then the final measurement here is my breakpoint length. That is the length from the waistline down to where the break into the flay happens. Okay, so yeah, I'm a size 14. I'm pretty curvy. Yeah, so this is my waist circumference. Now to make an 8 pieces skirt, I will divide my waist circumference into 8. This is serious business, guys, so stay focused. I want to make an 8 pieces skirt, so I would divide my waist circumference into 8. If I were to make a 6 pieces skirt, I will divide my waist circumference into 6. If I was to make a 12 pieces skirt, I will divide my waist circumference into 12. Whatever number of panels I want to make, I will divide my waist circumference by that number. So my waist is 34, divided by 8 would give me 4.2. And 4.2 further divided by 2 would give me 2.1. Now, why do I further divide by 2? Because I'm going to be cutting this skirt per panel. I'm going to be cutting it per panel. That is, I'm going to be cutting one panel out of the 8 panels, and I'm going to be cutting this panel on fold. So I divide by 2 because one full panel has 4.2 as the waistline, 4.2 inches as the waistline. Hope I didn't miss you there. Let me take it again. I divide my waist circumference by the number of panels, and I got 4.2. I further divided 4.2 by 2 because I'm going to be cutting this panel on fold. And then that gave me 2.1. I come to the hip line. I divide the hip circumference also by the number of panels I want. So this is an 8 panel or 8 pieces skirt. So I'll divide by 8. That gave me 5.2. And I'll further divide 5.2 by 2, which will give me 2.7. Dividing by 2 because I'm going to place one panel on fold, right? I'm cutting this skirt in panels, panel by panel. So one panel on fold, that's why I'm dividing into 2. As I go into sewing, into cutting, you would have a better understanding of the explanation I'm making here. All right, so this is my breakpoint circumference, which is 38 inches. Also, I'll divide 38 by 8, which is the number of panels I want to make, and that gave 4.7. And I further divided into 2 because I'm cutting the panel on fold, which would give 2.3 inches. All right, I'm not going to divide my length. I'm not going to divide the breakpoint length. The length is the length, nothing changes. But anything that is going against the body in a width-like direction or is circumferential, yeah, hope you get. Okay, so let me go down and explain this. Let me put my camera on the tripod. Okay, so these are the characteristics of a mermaid silhouette skirt. Now you can see I have 4 panels there. That's because I'm going to have 4 panels in the front and 4 panels at the back, right? So up there you can see the waistline, you can see the hip line, you can see the break points. Yeah. So for those of you who is hearing about the break points for the first time, here it is. The part of a mermaid skirt that tapers in, most times very close to the knee area, and breaks out into the sweep or the flay. That is the break point. Now I talked about the break point circumference. This is the circumference around the body where the break points would be. I also talked about the break point length. The break point length is the distance from the waist down to where you have the break point, okay? And then, of course, this length beside here is the full length of the skirt. So the way I'm going to cut this skirt, since it is freehand cutting, I'm going to cut one panel. One panel. I'll cut the panels one by one until I have 8 different panels. So I'm going to start out by ruling a straight line. That line will represent my fabric placed on fold. Remember I said I'm going to be cutting panel by panel, but I'm going to be cutting each panel on fold, right? So this straight line I'm about to rule now will represent my panel on fold. This straight line represents my panel, my fabric placed on fold. Now next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to roll out my waistline at the top of the line. Okay, on my fabric, this is exactly what I will do. So this is the waistline, okay, and then I'm going to make sure I mark the full length of my skirt. In my case is 44 inches, right? Sorry, 45 inches. So I'll make sure from my waistline down to the hem of my fabric is 45 inches. Then I'm going to roll. So that would be the sweep. This is the waist. Okay. Using my hip depth, which in my case is 9 inches, I'm going to come down 9 inches and mark out my hip line. Also, my measurement for my break point length is going to be 18 inches. Now, 18 inches isn't quite at my knee because I think mermaid skirts look kind of prettier when the break point is 2 inches or 3 inches above the knee. Okay, so my break point length is going to be 18 inches, 18 inches from the waistline down, which makes it above my knee. So I'm coming from my waistline, I'll mark 18 inches downwards, and that will be the break point line. Okay, now remember the calculation I did earlier on, right, where I calculated my waist circumference divided into 8 and further divided into 2. That is the calculation I'm going to be imputing at the waistline. So placing my tape, because now this is going to be the center of my panel. This is the center of my panel, which in this case is my fabric placed on fold. Okay, so placing my tape at the center of the panel, center line of the panel, I'm going to mark my waist circumference, which was 2.1 inches on the waistline. Then I'm going to add 1 inch for sewing allowance. I come to my hip line. After dividing into 8 and further dividing into 2, I got 2.7. So I'm going to mark the 2.7 on the hip line. And then I'll add 1 inch sewing allowance at the hip line. Then from my calculation, my break point circumference was 2.3. So 2.3 plus sewing allowance. So coming to the break point line, I'll mark 2.3 plus sewing allowance. Now, I didn't take a calculation for the sweep. I'm going to explain how you do the calculation for the sweep, but let me get done with this first. So for my sweep, I usually like a 16 inches sweep per panel. A 16 inches sweep per panel. For me, from there upwards is fine, but anything less than that, I don't like it that much, you know. But it doesn't mean it won't still come out looking like a mermaid skirt. It will, but for me, 16 inches upwards is fine. So half of 16 is 8. Remember, my panel is divided into 2, placed on fold. So 16 divided into 2 is 8. So coming to the sweep, I would mark 8 inches, and using my ruler or my hip curve, I'm going to connect the points from the hip waist to the hips, from the hips to the break point, and from the break point out to the sweep, right? And this is exactly what I am going to be doing on my fabric. I want to make it clear on the board, so when I'm doing it on my fabric, you won't be lost. I'm going to be working on an Ankara printed fabric. It's not a plain fabric, so I don't know if the chalk is going to be clear enough for you to see and understand, so hence this. In fact, if you've not understood anything I've done so far, go back to the beginning of this video, watch it, and come to this point. So I said I was going to teach you how to make the calculation for the sweep. Now, you should note that the bigger the sweep, the more dramatic, the more fun, the more swavy and feminine your mermaid silhouette skirt will be, or your 6 pieces skirt or 8 pieces skirt will be, right? So let's say the client gives you 3 yards of fabric and you have the will I say opportunity or you have the liberty to use all 3 yards of the fabric for your skirt, your 8 pieces skirt. So first and foremost, what you would do to determine the sweep, since you're using the entire fabric, would be to divide, it would be to multiply the 3 yards of fabric you have by 36. Why 36? Because we want to break these yards down to inches. So we are converting 3 yards into inches. So to convert 3 yards to inches, we multiply the 3 by 36, which would give 108 inch. Now, if you were given 2 yards, you will still do the same thing. 2 yards times 36, and then it will give you the result in inches. If you were given 4 yards, you are given 3.5 yards, whatever yardage you're given, and you have the liberty to use the entire fabric for your skirt, you multiply by 36 and break down from yardage to inches. Now that we know how many inches we have, we are going to be dividing the 108 inches by 8. We are dividing by 8 because that's the number of panels we want to make, or the number of pieces, like my Nigerian people love to say. I'm so Nigerian, don't mind me. You divide 108 by 8 and I got 13.5. So it means that I have the liberty to use 12.5 inches for my sweep and 1 inch for sewing allowance. If you add up 12.5 plus 1 inch, it will still give us the 13.5 inches, right? Or I can use 13 inches for my sweep and 0.5, or that is half an inch, as my sewing allowance. So this is how you do the math for your sweep. So this is the vintage Ankara fabric I'm going to be using to make my 8 pieces mermaid skirt. So I'm going to first start by ruling a line. This line here would be my waistline. All right. So the line here, as you can see, is my waistline. Now you have to note that this edge of the fabric have been placed on fold. This is it, right? I have placed my fabric on fold. Now I have like 6 yards of the fabric. The volume is quite much, so I cut out just a piece. I cut out what I'm going to be using to cut one panel. Remember, I said the sweep of the panel is 16 inches plus 1 inch is 17, so I cut out 17 inches here. So this is 17 inches of fabric, just so I don't have anything too bulky on my table. All right, so I've placed the fabric on fold, as you can see, and this is the waistline. I hope it's clear on the camera. So from the waistline there, I'm going to be marking my hip depth. My hip depth is 9 inches. So that's 9 inches there. That's my hip depth. Then the next thing I'm going to mark is my break point length. My break point length is 18 inches. So there you have 18 inches. And then the full length of my skirt is 45 inches, which is exactly the entire length of the Ankara. Okay, so I'm going to rule so you can see all the lines clearly. Okay, so there is the waistline, the hip line, the breakpoint line, and the edge of my fabric here is the hem line or the sweep. Okay, so after doing my calculations as explained earlier, my waist is 2.1 with all the maths that was done. So I'm going to add 1 inch to 2.1, which makes it 3.1. The 1 inch is my sewing allowance. So I come down to the hip. Based on the calculation we did earlier, the hip is 2.7 plus 1 inch would be 3.7. Coming down to the breakpoint line, the measurements, the calculation we did shows my breakpoint circumference should be 2.3 plus 1 inch sewing allowance would be 3.3. So using my curved ruler, I'm going to make the hip curve, connecting the waist to the hip, and then I would also connect from the hip to the break point. All right, and then at the sweep, I'm going to mark 8 inches plus 1 inch sewing allowance, 9 inches, because my sweep, once again, is 16 inches, which after dividing into 2 is 8, plus 1 inch sewing allowance brings it to 9. Okay, so there you go. Very easy. So now I'm going to be cutting. And here at the waistline, I'm going to be leaving 0.5 inches to make the waistband, or to join the waistline there to the waistband. So you can see this is what it looks like. So you see that a panel, when opened up, already gives you that characteristic shape of a mermaid silhouette. There you can see this is one panel already having the characteristic mermaid shape. I cut it on fold. Remember, it was on fold when I cut it. I just opened it up so you can see the single panel. So now I'm going to be using this panel now as a guide to cut the remaining 7. I'm going to be using this single panel now as a guide to cut the remaining 7 panels. This is another piece of fabric that I'm going to use to cut the second panel. So once again, I will place the fabric on fold. So I turned my fabric so you can see the folded edge here. So I've placed it on fold. This is the first panel that we had cut. So I'll place this panel on top of the fabric, arrange it properly, and then use it as a guide to cut the second panel. So here you can see I have 2 panels down. 2 panels are already ready, so we have 6 more to go. So once again, I will use the first panel which we have made as a guide to cut the remaining 6 panels. So we're done. These are all my panels laid out, 8 pieces of them. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide these panels into 2, 4 in front and 4 at the back. So these are 4 panels here, which will make the front, and the other 4 will make the back. Okay? Using pins, I'm going to hold each panel together so I can head to my sewing machine and stitch them up. So there I have 2 panels already pinned, so I want to attach to the other 2 panels to make 4 panels, which would complete the front of the skirt. And then I'll head to my sewing machine and join the panels up. So because there are 4 panels, I'm going to be having 3 seam lines in the front of the skirt. Okay, all right, so I'm going to continue pinning, and then I'll head to my machine, and when I come back you would see my the front of the skirt ready. So I'm going to go to the wrong side of this panels and sew them up. Okay, go to the wrong side and sew them up. So I have 3 seams here to join up to make the front, and I'll do the same thing at the back. So for no reason at all, I just chose to use my manual butterfly domestic sewing machine. Yep, so I'm ready to join the panels. So don't forget, I'm joining 4 panels for the front and 4 panels at the back. I have joined all 4 panels together. Okay, so this is the seam. I have ironed it out so it's flat. That's the seam and that's the seam. So these are 4 panels that makes the front. Okay, this is 4 panels that makes the back. All right, this opening is for the insertion of our zip. Is to insert the zip. So this is the back. This is what the back looks like. All right, so turning so you can see the wrong side. You can see the seam. This is the seam connecting 1, 2, 3, 4 panels to make the back. Now the seam that should connect the middle 2 panels is what we are going to use as our zip allowance, as you can see. Yeah, so next I'm going to go join the side seams. I'm going to join the front. I can't wait to see how it looks. I'm going to go join the front to the back, and then I'll fit and we see how it looks before we insert our band. Joining the side seam. This is the front. This is the front of the skirt, and this is the back, right? I still have my zip allowance open, so I'll just try it on to see how. Look what I have here. Yeah. And that's the back. And this is the front. Yeah, you can see how it flows, you know. I think my fit is nice. Guys, I want to share with you a quick trick, right? You see how the back looks here? Okay. My butt isn't really contoured. You can see the space. You can see the excess fabric I have here. So I'm going to show you a trick I use in taking all of that in, so the back is a lot more contoured. Okay, so let me quickly show you how. So as you can see right here, this is our center back. Yeah, you can see the zip opening. This is the seam that connects the center back. So I'm going to just flip it right over so it's closer to the camera. All right, so that's the center back right there. So I'm going to come down using my chalk. I'm going to mark the break point at the center back. So I'm going to spot the break point. I can still see my chalk marking from the first panel which we made. So I'll just follow that out, and that is our break point. Now from the seam, I don't know if the camera if you can see clearly the thread. I'm going to go inwards by 1.5 inch. So from the seam there, where I have my thread, where my finger is, I'm going inwards by 1.5 inch. Pulling the camera closer, you can see the thread running, and then I left the gap for the zip to be installed. So from the thread there, which is the stitch, I went inwards by 1.5 inch. And now using my chalk, I'm going to make a curve connecting from the 1.5 inch point back to the stitch or the thread line, just like that. You would want to make this curve to be as blunt as possible. What that means is not too sharp, not too curvy. Just make it look like the natural contour of your butt. So that's how it looks there. Okay, so having done that, you would have to come to the break point, right, like so, and then make lines, broken lines, or make a connection to also blend this back into the flay, just as you can see. So now I'll go to my machine, follow the chalk mark like that, and contour the center back of my skirt. So I'm back. I've done the contour. Now you can appreciate the curve of my butt at the back. Look how gorgeous it is. So yeah, you've learned something today. I'm already loving the skirt, guys, but the skirt is not completed yet. So I'll go fix my zip and my band, and also hem the bottom of the skirt, and we're done. Ta-da! The zip has been inserted. There we go. So next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and work on the band. I'll cut this excess zip off. I'll just move the zipper down, cut off the excess zip, then I'll fix a waistband. If you've watched this tutorial up until this point, God bless you. Don't forget to give this a try. Let me know how it goes. I'm always in the comment section. Have a fabulous day, and please, my skirt is too beautiful. Let me know what you think in the description box. It is beautiful, right? This is a hit. Thank you. Bye.